So here's the issue with that, right? Because in theory, I think you are right. In theory, you are right. Unfortunately, that's just not the dynamics of it, right?
Yeah.
Because right now the conversation is that baby mamas are not marriage worthy. If you become a stepdaddy, you're a simp. These women don't deserve marriage because they've had children already. Like these are the conversations we're having.
Oh my goodness.
These are the messaging that's continuing to like resonate with people, right? But I did want to backtrack a little bit. I think we really need to like dead the part of the conversation where it's only like the Pookies or the bad boys that are doing this stuff. It's not. It's regular everyday dudes doing it too. And I think the moment we can like have that conversation of like any man, and I didn't say every, I said any man can just like decide to walk away from his responsibilities, I think it we start to have a more realistic version of the conversation. Because the truth is that because there's this assumption that women automatically get custody of the child, that a lot of men are like, "Okay, not my problem. You know, I didn't want her to have this kid in the first place. I want to have this kid, whatever." Your responsibility is still your responsibility, right? Regardless of how many baby daddies there are before you, if you got her pregnant, you already knew the situation that you were getting in. We tell women to pick better, and yet these men are still impregnating women who have multiple children with multiple baby daddies, right? You also need to pick better, sir, right? We also need to have the conversation of men are the ones who are the gatekeepers to marriage. If you're talking about these women need to submit themselves to the man that they choose as a husband, they need to get married. And it's the men that decide who's marriageable and who isn't. And right now, if you have even one child that was born out of wedlock, a lot of men are disqualifying you as marriage material, right? So we need to have this conversation with a little bit more integrity in what's going on in order to find a more reasonable solution. Because like we're continuing with the same YouTube talking points without discussing like the reality of what's actually going on.
Well, the reality, people have the freedom to choose, and they choose to have kids, and some people are choosing to walk away. That's what happens when people have the freedom to do what they want. You're not completely skating past the consequences of those actions, which is why we have the laws that we have and that we have the relationships and the communities and the families that we have. But all of this stuff stems from the fact of the matter is that we have the freedom to choose. You can choose the man you want, you can choose the woman you want, you can choose to use contraceptive, you can choose to not use contraceptive. You can't necessarily have the outcomes that you're trying to fix unless you start curtailing people's behavior almost by force. But, with us having the freedoms and the things that we do, is like there's going to be people that's going to make reasonable decisions and make the changes, and there's going to be people that don't. And I agree with you 100%. Any man has the capabilities to leave a woman in a bad situation, whether it's in marriage, whether it's with kids. Any man has that capability. But guess what? Majority of us men, that when we do decide to embark on this journey with you, even if we don't like you, we're still going to try to do something for you, even if we don't like you. Because sometimes we look at this kid, like you said, that child didn't choose to be here. So some brothers will make concessions for you to take care of you, because taking care of this child also means taking care of you. But I think this is a really good conversation, only because like if we can begin to acknowledge more often that okay, both sides have an error and a responsibility to bring all this stuff together, which I think was the original point David was making. If you make people more responsible internally instead of getting some other system involved, right? I understand the system came because of the issues that was there. Yes, I agree 100%. However, the thing is that like if people aren't personally invested in fixing the situation, then it don't matter if you bring a system outside of them to come and fix it. Because yes, you're going to fix one side of the issue, but then you create another problem on the other side. There needs to be what David was basically alluding to. There needs to be natural selection. There needs to be natural consequences to these actions, because if enough women do not get receive any support whatsoever in regards to, them taking care of these kids by these guys that aren't willing to take care of these kids, you would hope that enough smart women would have realized, dang, maybe having kids with a person is important business. Maybe it's more than just pleasure, right? Because most of the time you see a lot of people having sex, it's not because of kids. They having sex because they think of pleasure more so than a purpose behind it. So on the surface, David, I understand what you're coming from. But from a very like realistic standpoint, you have to add the balance to the things that have already been created in order to help with the fact that people have free will.
Which goes into men prioritize desires, women prioritize happiness. Which goes right into this. Does anybody else have anything to contribute? We haven't even gotten to the subject. I don't even know how we got here. But it works. Did anybody else wanted to because I think this is a very important conversation, because it really is a problem, that's going on, and it's not getting any better. If anything, it's getting worse. Mm-hmm. And it's spreading. It's no longer us. It's all races. It's really spreading. So if anybody else wanted to say anything, you can.
I was just going to say, whoever wanted to look it up, I think it was HuffPost or something like that had the study in there. So you could just follow that to find what I guess the original study was. But one of the other articles I was just like browsing just now, because I was trying to find the study, is that they said a lot of times men don't get custody is because they simply don't ask for it. So that is really the issue. You're not asking, so you're not getting. And then the other thing, it was saying that looking at the dynamic, that a lot of times in a marriage, the woman is the one who spends most of the time with the child, like doing activities, stuff like that. Just based on what it was saying, is that men spend like maybe 6% of the time, whereas the woman is double that time. So at the point, right. So, well, women are working too, but the expectation,
y'all don't work, man. We ain't gonna do that.
Women are working too.
We're not gonna be disingenuous and say women, like if we can pull the stats on the amount of time men spend at work versus the amount of time women spend at work, it's not even close.
But you're not considering the point. The women are allowing you to be able to spend that time because you're not having to do what? You're not having to take care of kids.
We've been working since the beginning of time. What are we talking about?
Right. AP, listen. What I'm trying to say is the reason that you are able to spend the hours based on stats of working, if you have children and you are married, the reason is because the woman is more than likely taking care of the children, which allows you the time to be able to work. So my point is, right, for women, they are working, but then they have to come home to, I know people hate when I say this, like a second job, right, taking care of the family. So if the woman is spending most of the time with the children, then when it comes to a divorce, that's going to be one of the questions. Who primarily takes care of the kids' day-to-day activities, day-to-day things? And it's going to be the woman. And so in that regard, it makes a better decision, I guess, in terms of judgment wise, that the woman would end up getting custody because she's been involved and had, spent more time with the child. However, the secondary thing to that is not just that she may spend more time. The other thing is, like I said, the fathers they're simply not asking for custody. And 51% of the time, the decision is made out of court where they are agreeing that the mother get custody of the child. So it's not necessarily the court systems are against men. It's the setup, the dynamic that has been established prior to even getting to the court.